And you actually have, well, two stories. We're going to talk about them simultaneously, but you got two stories this week about San Jose, California, right? They did something that was first of its kind, right?
That's correct. So the city council officially voted to approve the, as you said, unprecedented ordinances that will require all gun owners in the city to get mandatory liability insurance, in addition to paying an annual fee, which they're saying is going to be around $25. But yeah, so they've officially gone ahead and approved this. It's been a long time in the making. I think we reported on this last year sometime around the summertime. Yeah. But yeah, so after a lengthy public input period, there was a lot of online comments filed, largely negative. They still went ahead and voted it up.
Yeah, and it was sort of a marathon meeting that they had, but because we both stayed up to watch it at East Coast time, and they didn't finish till like 1 a.m. East Coast time to do the vote. They did a bunch of stuff. They talked for a long time, and then they ended up splitting the ordinance into two different ordinances, which I guess there were two council members who voted against the fee, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so it was 10-1 for the insurance mandate and 8-3 for they call it a fee, although I think most people would call it a tax because it's just, they're just charging you for owning a gun. It's not a sales tax. It's not a fee for service. It's just a tax on your property. And this applies, to be clear, to anyone who owns a gun at all in San Jose, right?
That's correct. And because we know California has a gun registry, that means they are well aware if you have a gun or not. They said they'll be in contact with the California Department of Justice because that's the only agency that keeps track of that registry. But they'll be using that database to send notices out to individual households that they have on record that own guns, basically informing them of their obligation now to get insurance and to pay that annual fee.
Yeah. And so what are they proposing to use this fee for?
So I guess there's a nonprofit organization that's not yet fully formed. It's still in the works, with various public health experts and community leaders, that all the money is going to go.
Real quick, though, that's kind of the story of this whole ordinance, right? That's not really, none of this is fully formed yet. There's no insurance policy that meets the requirements, right? Either.
That's right. We, as you said, when we watched the hearings about this, there's all sorts of questions from various council members that heard different things from different insurance companies that they talked to. So it's pretty clear that this isn't fully hashed out yet. I think they have a meeting in February where they're going to hopefully have more details about this.
And it technically hasn't gone into effect yet either, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's only been approved by the council, but it's not yet law. So after that final meeting in February, there'll be 180 days after that meeting when that law finally goes into effect. So this will be, I think August is when they're shooting for to have this become good law.
Next August, or no, this August.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But and so they want to use the fee to create a nonprofit that's going to, I guess, provide training for gun safety and then provide services for people who've been shot, right?
Correct. Yeah. It's going to be a lot of like mental health services for people affected by gun violence. As you said,
even
gun
if
safety
you haven't
training.
Been shot, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Essentially, that's also not fully worked out. We saw some trepidation from some members. I guess in the ordinance provision, it says only these services will only apply to people with guns, which is a little strange that you're getting taxed, but then they're applying the services to you when the entire rationale was that this was going to somehow pay the city back for the costs of gun violence.
Right.
So it's not yet clear, the rationale.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the mayor who's the driving force behind this. His name's Sam Liccardo. He's a Democrat. I think everyone on the council is a Democrat too, right?
I believe. I'm not sure if they have partisan affiliation on the actual council members.
They might not, you're right. But the mayor is certainly a Democrat, and he's been the one pushing this. And his comments kind of make it pretty obvious that this is sort of intentionally punitive against gun owners. Here's a quote from him from your story. While the Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms, it does not require taxpayers to subsidize gun ownership. We won't magically end gun violence, but we will stop paying for it. We can also better care for its victims and reduce gun-related injuries and death through sensible intervention. So, I mean, on his explicit justification itself, I mean, it's sort of a punitive thing. They're
Sure.
saying that gun owners, gun ownership is a drag on society because of gun violence, and so we're going to charge people who own guns these fees and require them to get insurance in order to, make up for the harm caused. Right? That's the basic logic here.
That is the rationale. And I think the mayor would have a point if this was somehow going to be attached to criminal use of firearms. But as was uncovered in the text of the ordinance, and as well as the public comment and the deliberations on the council members, that insurance companies will not, in fact, insure criminal behavior.
Right.
It will only apply to accidental use of firearms. Which makes up, as we know statistically, makes up a very small amount of gun harm.
Certainly. And even in that case, a lot of accidental shootings are the result of negligence on the part of the owner of the gun, or at least the person handling the gun. And so I think it's unclear how willing insurance companies are going to be to insure against somebody who's grossly negligent in handling their firearms to the point where they're accidentally shooting themselves or someone else.
That's right.
So, that's likely why you don't see that sort of insurance on the market today already. Also probably because these are really fairly rare incidents. Accidental shootings they're not
That's right.
super common. It's not like car accidents. Car accidents are far more common than gun accidents. It's an interesting proposal. It's first of its kind. It's a novel approach, very controversial, right? Because now we're already seeing lawsuits against this, correct?
That's right. Not even a full 24 hours after the final votes were tallied, a gun rights group has already filed suit. So the National Association for Gun Rights immediately filed suit in federal court, essentially saying that the imposition of the tax amounts to a tax on a constitutional right. A direct quote from the lawsuit here says, San Jose's imposition of a tax fee or other arbitrary cost on gun ownership is intended to suppress gun ownership without furthering any government interest. And it points out the fact that, as proposed, non-payment of the insurance or failure to show that you've paid the fee, under the ordinance, they want to make that grounds for at least temporary confiscation of a firearm, which they include in the complaint in this lawsuit.
Yeah. So, and then obviously you spoke to a number of other gun rights groups like the Second Amendment Foundation and Firearms Policy Coalition. And there's some disagreement over strategy here or timing, because they want to file suits as well, but they're waiting, right?
That's correct. I talked to Alan Gottlieb at the Second Amendment Foundation, and he told me that SAF and Firearms Policy Coalition are going to jointly file a lawsuit, but they're waiting until, because as we said before, this isn't good law yet. So there's a legal standard called ripeness, where basically there has to be some sort of controversy. It has to be the right timing in order to better prepare them for the case. So they will be filing suit, just not as of yet. And I'm sure the other gun groups.
The NRA will probably get in on it, or the California, their California branch, the California Rifle and Pistol Association, will probably be involved in lawsuits as well, I'd expect, especially because this ordinance really kind of strikes at the heart of Heller. There's a lot of speculation over what the Second Amendment specifically covers in terms of what protections it offers for different activities with firearms, because the Supreme Court simply hasn't done much on this issue since the beginning since the founding of the country. And so they're still deciding whether or not may issue gun carry permits are an infringement on the Second Amendment. That's exactly what they're deciding right now at the court this year. But there's a lot of things that they don't know for sure. Interestingly, though, literally the one thing we do know from the Supreme Court is that the right to own a gun for self-defense inside of your own home, a gun in common use, is protected by the Second Amendment. That's like the literal core.
That's correct.
Of Heller. And so this goes right to that core, because they're trying to put a tax and a insurance requirement on that specific concept of being able to even own a gun. Not, it's not a tax on your purchase of a gun. It's not, a tax on your purchase of training for the gun. It's literally a tax on just your ownership of that gun. It's a property tax. And And the insurance requirement is a similar idea of like, you can't have the gun otherwise.
And they're literally using homeowners insurance as the grounds to get these guns covered under a liability policy. To your point as well, they make an exemption for law enforcement and for people that have waivers for low income. But another one of the exemptions is for folks with a concealed carry permit, which we know Santa Clara County, where San Jose is, makes it very difficult to get a permit. And the people that they do grant, the people that do get a permit, it turns out are in sort of a pay-to-play scheme because their former sheriff is now being indicted for corruption charges. So it's kind of, like you said, it strikes directly at the heart of home ownership because no one else can carry outside the home with their guns. So it doesn't cover that.
So this will likely go one of two ways in my personal view. And that's either the ordinance will get struck down basically immediately and the city council won't bother to try and follow up. You saw this actually in California recently with ordinances in LA and San Francisco where they tried to ban NRA members from doing work with the city, right? They tried to say, if you're a member of the NRA, you can't get city contracts, which it's not explicitly a Second Amendment issue like this one is, but it's obviously more of a First Amendment issue. But that got basically cut off at the knees right away. And then the cities gave up on the idea altogether and didn't try to appeal and push this through any further than that as sort of a symbolic thing. This might end up the same way. That's kind of where I'm leaning right now, just on my personal view of this, is my personal analysis of what's likely to happen with this law. But the other direction, what could happen is if San Jose keeps trying to defend this law or this ordinance, you could absolutely see this end up at the Supreme Court, because the thing about the Ninth, first of all, San Jose is in the Ninth Circuit. It's in California. And the Ninth Circuit is really not keen to strike down any gun regulations at all, ever, pretty much. So at least not at the full panel. Sometimes you'll get a 3-judge panel that does it, but the full panel, as actually one of the members of the Ninth Circuit was just making this point through mockery of his fellow judges, which we talked about recently. But the Ninth Circuit could uphold something like this. I could see that happening, and then at that point, this is absolutely something that I could see the Supreme Court wanting to weigh in on, especially because in the Roberts era, they like to take sort of novel outliers, right? And this is the most novel outlier in the country right now as far as a gun law is concerned. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially because it'd be so easy for them, because it's just like basically right in the wheelhouse of what they've already decided, and how they don't really even have to expand much beyond that. So those are the two paths I could see it taking. I think the first is more likely. I think this is just kind of a stunt. The mayor's term is up soon and he can't be mayor anymore. This gives him attention, and maybe he's looking to further his career elsewhere by being at the center of a news story like this. I don't know. Well, obviously he says that's not the reason, but I'd be surprised if this makes it beyond the first ruling in federal court.